Mind Bend. Non-ordinary and extraordinary states of consciousness for Mind Bend Creative.
All right, so Haize, we met at a party around Halloween, which you apparently don't remember. I must have made quite an impression. And
it was 5 births ago, man.
Yeah, 5 births ago. Yes, so I guess one birth is, you're wrapped up in that for quite a while, aren't you?
I can be.
Yeah.
It can be up to 3 days, 4 days.
My initial thought was the show is called Mind Bend, Non-Ordinary and Extraordinary States of Consciousness. We always use psychedelic as the entry point to the conversation. What does that mean to you? What do you see it? Where do you see it in the world? What does it mean in your past? What does it mean in your future? And then non-ordinary and extraordinary states of consciousness. And I did an interview a couple years ago now with a practitioner in Arizona who was talking about psychedelic therapy for mothers with trauma from birth.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then also she was doing some coaching as well. I don't think she was a doula or a midwife.
Maybe a mental therapist.
She was a psychotherapist. Yeah, a counselor.
That sounds
counselor.
Pretty much right.
Yeah. And she was doing ketamine assisted psychotherapy specifically.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have any experience with ketamine.
Yeah.
But I do know that in the postpartum realm for moms with their mental wellness, especially if they know about it ahead of time, like they've had experiences with it, that maybe they're on medication or maybe they have been on medication before and they're concerned about the hormonal dip in the postpartum process, then, that's when I'll have a conversation with them about how they want to prep for that postpartum possibility. Because the problem is, not that they go through it, that they don't have a plan for it if they do, right? And so I usually will, if they don't have a therapist, I'll find them one. And if they don't want to be on meds, I talk to them about all the plant medicines that are so great for depression, so great to help navigate that, all the functional plants that do such great work around herbs. So any kind of plant, I'm all into.
Yeah. And wood,
but it's
too.
helpful. Yeah,
and wood. Yeah.
I love wood.
I'm going to have you bring that microphone a little closer to your voice so we can catch every
nuance,
every detail.
Gosh,
just draw it into the body like it's a baby coming to the light.
Still?
Yeah,
more?
Let's get there you go. We want to represent the beautiful voice.
Oh my goodness.
And all of its dulcet spectrum. So
I'm not dulcet. I love that word.
Dulcet de leche. So one of the things I was thinking about, or have been thinking about recently a lot, I started editing a podcast on the side. That's someone that you're closely associated with as a part of, the Birthing Instincts. Yeah, Dr. Stu and Bliss, Birthing Instincts podcast. I'm outing myself here as the editor of the Birthing Instincts podcast. But I never thought about, I haven't thought as consistently about birth and birthing, midwifery, obstetrics. And the implications of how that process is handled. I mean, I've thought personally, and we hear a lot about in the psychedelic space, the trauma that is innate with birth, the experience that it is for every human organism that comes out in a birth. And there's so many factors that can color that experience, right? For both the baby and the mother, right? Yeah.
Well, and quiet as it's kept, the partner can have trauma from what they're witnessing.
Sure.
Like what I could see, I would say, oh my gosh, that was an amazing birth. You were so powerful. You showed up brilliantly. Oh my gosh. But if she feels like it wasn't, so I never share what I felt until I hear what she felt, because I can even make it more, right? But then also the partner can be just like, that was terrifying. Yeah. And mom's like, I am the bomb, So it just depends. But there can be more in a hospital space, in the medical industrial complex, than it can be in a home space.
I thought it just made a lot of sense to take a look at this with you, at birthing as a non-ordinary and extraordinary state of consciousness. So I'll ask you to set us up here by giving us a little background as to how are you a doula and a midwife, or is a midwife the same thing as a doula? What differentiates it?
They're totally different.
They're different. Okay, so just tell us the origin story, if you would.
Okay, so a midwife is similar to an OBGYN, except she does not specialize in surgery. She specializes in birth.
Okay.
A doula is an emotional, educational reference point for the birthing family. So all things education, all things advocacy, all things comfort measures, all the ways to navigate and have a physiological birth where it's uninterrupted and the mama is empowered and everybody just leaves her the hell alone so she can do it. Her body knows what to do, and the less interruptions, the more there is a success of an uninterrupted vaginal birth, right?
During the actual labor? Is that what you're talking about? That moment? Yeah.
The issue with the hospitals and why it creates so much trauma is that they're working every day. This is their everyday job. So they're kind of mailing it in. And they're also looking at it as a pathology.
The actual pregnancy.
The pregnancy, yeah. And it's not. It's a normal thing. The body is designed for it. It's brilliant. Now, are there cases where they need some support from Western medicine? Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're grateful for it, but we also want to use it strategically and not have it be so much about protocols for the medical industrial complex's liability. All these things lead to more trauma, lead to a higher case of depression, postpartum, psychosis, all of the things. So, we can avoid it at the top. It'd be great. But everyone has free will, to do what they want to birth their children. And I think that for me, my experience I started off in herbology, long time ago. And my teacher said to me, you need to understand each plant because each plant or each herb has medicine and you need to know what that is. And the first thing I ever worked with was rose, which is a powerful plant. People are not even aware of all the nutritional value, all the vitamins and oh my gosh, it's.
I would sit down to a nice rose stew if you cooked it for us, Haize.
Okay, I might just do that.
But it was recommended to me that I start using rose essence in a therapeutic way.
Yeah, flower essences, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's such a powerful plant, and it can open up the heart, and then it has all these vitamins in it that nobody would suspect. It's so good for you, so good for your skin. It's all the way around, and it just makes you feel good, right? So once I started working with the rose, and then I was in it, and I worked with every other plant I could for at least a month at a time.
But herbology was something that you caught on to from the jump.
I started with herbology, and because I wanted to know about the herbs, because I knew it'd be great to have in my pocket, in my wheelhouse as a doula, right?
Oh, okay.
Right, because a doula, I'll speak for myself because there's so many different types of doulas, right? But for myself, I have a background in herbology. I'm either certified or I used to be, or I was licensed and whatever. Hello work, massage, reflexology, Reiki, herbology, homeopathy. I'm a life coach. I am also a ordained minister. All these different things, everything that I needed so that I could hold the space for birthing families. And so I started with herbs, and then that led me to sitting in plant medicine ceremonies and really understanding the power of plants and plant medicines. Some beautiful work. And once I did that, and then I actually, before I did the plant ceremony, I had my son, Jahi. And I went through that whole experience, and I chose a midwife, and I did the whole thing, and it was just incredible and amazing. And the woman who was helping the midwife was a doula, and she asked if I would like her there, and I took a look at myself and my partner, and I was like, yeah, I would like you here. And she was incredible, and she was saving me. And I asked her, what is this that you're doing? And she said, I'm a doula. And I said, okay, how do I do this? And I started writing down everything that she did.
Wait, what moment is this in?
I'm in labor.
You're okay, all right. You're taking notes.
I'm taking
All right.
copious notes,
Okay.
my friend. And she said to me, she said, honey, we can do this after you have your baby. And I said, no, I'm good. Let's do it. I want to know.
You were already on the path. Were you a midwife at the time?
I was, no.
No.
I did a hard pivot to become a doula.
Okay.
Hard pivot. I was in the entertainment industry. I was a theater kid. I was a professional dancer. I was doing professional theater.
Okay, but herbs were always an interest even
Fascinated.
then. Okay, so you came from a performing arts.
My grandmother was a gardener.
Okay.
And that's where I get my green thumb from. That's where my garden love comes from. And I now grow my own herbs and my own food and everything. So I love that. And so she was amazed. I wrote down everything. And then when my son weaned at 3 years old, then I started getting certified in all the things she did. I wasn't even a doula yet, but I knew I wanted to. So that's how I started. And then I sat in my first plant medicine ceremony, and that is where something clicked. I was like, oh, this is so familiar. I already know this. I've done this. The similarities of a birth ceremony to a plant ceremony is, oh my gosh, it's so deep. It's so beautiful, but I knew it already. The waves, the flow, the coming and the going, the fact that it's expansive. Birth is not linear, even though hospitals look at it as a timeline from here to there. We know that it's expansive and it's cyclical.
The sense of time.
Oh yeah, it's a vortex. It's a whole nother thing. Like it literally is. Like the mamas feel the same way in their labors that I felt in my first plant ceremony, and I was like, oh, okay.
When did you put that together?
My first plant ceremony.
That's what. Okay, and then other people.
That was in 90. When was that? 92, 93.
Okay, and you heard things from other mothers that mirrored.
Not then, because I was doing my own journey there.
Okay.
Right. I just got it.
Okay. Yeah.
When I sat and I was like,
after birth, after
I had
okay,
my son,
yeah.
exactly. And so that first ceremony, I was just like, this is wild.
What was it? What was the ceremony?
It was, what was it? I think it was psilocybin.
Okay.
So very much a heart opener.
Yeah.
Very loving, especially the way that it was facilitated. And I could see that there was something here. And I was like, I want to just start investigating. So years of just like asking questions to other mothers. And, at the time in the 90s, it was not like it is today at all. So I was asking questions and people were looking at me like, how dare you?
So different.
Oh my gosh, you are, And now, of course, now try to stop a mama from microdosing. Good luck, right?
Moms who microdose.
Yeah, they do. And especially if they know they have mental health issues that they want to circumvent, they want to be mindful of. They might be on psilocybin. They might be on ayahuasca. They might be doing any of those things, There is a center now in Santa Monica that is exploring psilocybin, ayahuasca, and ketamine, and how it works with addiction, depression, and pregnancy. Like, it's fascinating. I can't wait till they release studies. It's so new that I don't have any intel yet, but I'm excited.
Well, the studies are happening with specific focus on pregnant mothers who are dealing with addiction.
Or depression.
And
they don't want to be on medication.
Can you describe that ceremony in 92?
Oh, gosh. Okay, yes. I'll do my best. It was in Topanga Canyon, of course. And it was facilitated by some of the most amazing, powerful women that I've ever met, still to this day. Like, incredible. And it was my first experience, so I had nothing to compare it to. The only thing I had known about it was like reading, Ken Kesey's stuff and reading Timothy Leary's things and stuff like that. But I never experienced it myself. And this was a group of women, and it was a group of diverse women, and diverse culturally and in age. So it was like incredible and very powerful. And they incorporated poetry and music. And, you know, before I knew it, I was just, you know, all in. I was like, this makes sense to me. This absolutely makes sense to me. I didn't not even mind, like some of the women that I was with, the first timers, had a very hard time with the taste. I was like, oh, this tastes like earth. I'm fine with this. This is great. And I just really enjoyed the ride. I enjoyed the discovery of myself. And it was really, you know, one of my really good friends, my dear, dear brother, Tony Moss, always talks about it's not necessarily what happens in the ceremony. It's always about the work in between the work to integrate what happened in the ceremony so that you actually grow from the ceremony. It's not a party, right? It's deep spiritual work. And so for me, I can't do any of these things outside recreational because I'm always in communication with spirit and
You're
with source
predisposed
and
to be that way.
Yeah. So for me, that's how it works, and that's what made sense. But I really got it when I sat with him and sat with them, and it was just like the work in between the work. Yeah, absolutely. So if you have a mama who's going through, there's trauma or there's abuse or anything that's in her body, and she's getting ready to go through this ceremony, you know, we have to get it flat. We have to work on it so that it doesn't show up in the birth ceremony because it can derail it, right? You understand? So we're looking at all those things. And if they're open to it already, a lot of people who find me are already open to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I would imagine that pregnancies are getting derailed by trauma left and right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it's not dealt with, any type of trauma, any type of emotional, any type of relationship or trauma that happened as a young child or a teenager, anytime will show up if it's not dealt with, you know? So I'm that person. I love to get things flat. I love to help them step into the archetype of the Divine Mother and be ready for that journey. Because if they're hanging out in a childhood trauma and they're stuck in the child archetype, there's no way that's going to go well in the birth ceremony when we're asking her to drop into the mother. And they've been hanging out in the child or the maiden, right? So a lot of times when I'm working with different herbs or plants, this is what I'm healing. I'm helping them navigate their own healing through the plants, through their connection to nature, through the connection to the planet, understanding that they are the same. Like if they got it, that they are the cosmic mother, that they are the creatrix holding the cradle of life, there's no way you could second guess the power that you hold and wield to do this journey that you have to do. You know, so it's a lot of mindset work too. Right.
Pre, during, and post. Yeah. I think it sounds like, I mean, is it a, not extravagance, but is it, I mean, I wasn't really familiar very much with doula. I knew the term. I'd heard it around for a long time, but
Yeah,
hadn't
it's got
really
a lot
focused.
of sting on it.
Yeah, I hadn't really, but now it just seems so appealing. And if I was married and my wife was having a child, if they wanted to have a doula, I would be like, amazing. I'd like a doula, you know, because it seems like the sort of thing where a doula can be so many things to one person in such a profoundly beneficial way. How often are doulas employed in births in America? Is there any way to like say how often that a doula is present?
You know, it's more popular now. I did an experiment, I think it was at the early 2000s, where I went around Pasadena asking people if they knew what a doula was.
Just like downtown canvassing.
Downtown, just doing it with my friend Eric Stewart. And
needed research, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody knew. There was one person who said, "Oh, they catch babies, right?" And I said, "That's a midwife." And they're like, "Oh, what's the difference between a doula and a midwife?" A doula is not medical, right? They can't do anything medical. So that's why we can be specialists in or certified in understanding herbs, plants, nutrition, things like that, because that's not considered medical.
Okay.
Right? Now, anything...
But holistic preparatory.
Correct.
Yeah.
Anything else is in the purview of like midwifery and OBGs, right? So just to see that they didn't know that then, that was like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Imagine the more you go towards the center of America, the less you're going to know what any of those things are.
Yeah. I'm from Kansas City.
Oh, hi.
Yeah. But I
Where in
I wasn't...
Kansas?
Well, I grew up in Shawnee, Kansas, but I was living in Kansas City, Missouri before I moved, and I lived in New York for a while before that. But yeah, it just wasn't anything that I had any consistent exposure to whatsoever.
Yeah.
But after exposure to that podcast specifically, and then just kind of reading up on you and the work a little bit, wow, what a thing for women to have access to at such a very important time, which I think also, obviously, not a woman, never been through labor, but I don't have a sense for how routine can birth feel, how mechanical or just like, yeah, because it's like, all right, just go through the process here and maybe not set it up as such an intentional or
right.
Set yourself up for it to be so positively, lastingly significant for the mother and the child.
So, and that is the thing. I mean, every woman has the right to have her baby, the way she wants, her birth be the way she wants, right? And that, for a lot of people, is in the hospital, right? But for the people in the hospital, they're at work. So they're just like, everything's the same. And for them to see a mama come in there, very intentional, very clear about what she's up for and what she's not up for, which is hard because people go to the hospital for all the things. Right? But now she's saying, I don't want those things. I don't have to have those things. I'm here just in case. And this is where I feel safest, right? So it can be mechanical there. And my job then in the hospital setting is not only to educate my client on all her choices, educate the family about informed consent, to have them understand advocacy and to really have agency over her body, but also to make sure that the room is entered with reverence. That, so for me, I might say, oh, okay, could you just say that again, slow down, 'cause she's in labor, she's in active labor, so she's feeling some things. And I know that she did not take that in. So could you repeat what you just said a little slower, please? Because, like I said, she's in labor, right? So I'm just reminding them that this is a human being. And as often as I can, I'm humanizing my clients. I'm taking them off of all the machines and stuff. I'm like, go take a shower, go in the bathroom, go do this, go do that, and then put them back on,
And you have a sense for, because of your experience and being in those facilities, which are intimidating facilities in a lot of ways, you have a sense for what could go and what could not go, or where you're going to get pushed back or where you're not.
Yeah, and I'm also looking to see what's happening with baby and with mama to prevent certain things, right? So I'm kind of doing, it's a lot of work. And that's why doulas are more popular now. We got very popular during COVID because people were jumping out of the hospitals to be doing home births, right? And then they were understanding more of what a doula does. That in 2020 is when I started my doula training because there was not enough doulas. There's still not enough doulas. If you think about how many women are having babies in Los Angeles daily, only like 4,000 of them are having doulas. And there's only about so many doulas, right? So there's not enough, and it's a need. And I also made sure that I trained some male doulas because why? Because partners need doulas too.
There are male doulas?
Oh yeah, there's several. I train some, and there's some all over the world. One of the most popular ones here is Teddy the doula. Like, he's amazing, and I think he does East Coast, West Coast. Like, it's a thing.
Are they doulas for the mother or for the father?
For both.
For both.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But it's really helpful for a man to, you know why it's helpful for a man to have a male doula? Let me tell you why. Because society tells the men that they can only feel one or two things: anger and rage, or hilarity. They're either just pissed off or they are jackass. So when they are witnessing the birth of their child and witnessing the mother of their child going through such a profound, phenomenal experience, and they're feeling all the things, they don't know where to put it. They don't know how to handle it. They don't know what to navigate it, because they're not allowed to cry. They're not allowed to be joyous and express joy. They're not, it's it's ridiculous. When I think, truthfully, when you hear stories about men passing out, they're not passing out always from what they're seeing, but sometimes they're passing out from what they're feeling. Because they don't, where do they
And
put
an
it?
inability to express.
Yeah. So in my experience, sometimes the male doulas are really powerful for the partners, and sometimes the partners want a female doula so they can understand what's happening with, the mother, hormonally, through the changes. Like, it's a crazy ride. Like, if you think about it, the women are in ceremony from the time that embryo starts doing its thing, because the hormones are taking over. So they are in an altered state and in their own pregnancy ceremony, and then they go into the birth ceremony, right? So for over 10 months, they're in a little psychedelic trip. Like, it's just a whole thing. The dreams don't even give them relief. They get surreal dreams, but they're in a heightened state. And it has to be this way because we're asking a lot of the body. She's going from immortal to an immortal and then back again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Talk about a mind bend.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then in postpartum, it doesn't stop. So she built a baby for 10 months, and then she's got to keep a baby alive.
What is postpartum depression?
Postpartum depression it can be a lot of things. Sometimes it's chemical. Sometimes it's hormonal. Sometimes that does happen. A lot of times it's environment. She feels isolated. She feels alone. She's not supported. Or she's just struggling within herself about, like, she's judging herself and how she's showing up, how hard or how easy it is. Like, society has an expectation of mothers that is kind of unrealistic. Like, breastfeeding is not easy for every woman. It's a partnership. It is the art of breastfeeding for a reason. It takes cultivation sometimes. And then other women are blessed that they just pop the baby on and everything's great. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of, why am I not doing, why can't I, how come I, this whole thing. But our society is very comparative. Our society is very judgmental. There's a lot of unsolicited opinions given in postpartum. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of opinions given to a pregnant mother anyway, period.
Not to mention a scarcity of time to figure it out, too, when you're expected to get right back to work, right?
Exactly, because, hello, we're here in America where we do not honor that time. And we get a little bit of time. Some people do, if they're privileged to. They get some time off, right? But I work with a whole demographic of women who don't get time off.
Yeah.
They have to go back to work, and they have to navigate that. And if they want to, still breastfeed their baby, that's a whole undertaking. That's not usually supported. They have to figure it out.
I was on the verge of using the word extravagance earlier, but a luxury is the closer to the right word.
How sad is that?
Is it a luxury to be able to have a doula? Is that what it takes, like access to the opportunity for luxury?
You know what? At one time it was considered that. I feel like it's a necessity now. Yeah. Especially in the industrial medical complex, And we have some organizations out here now who do support women who don't have the funds at that time for like a super doula, right, or something like that. Frontline Doulas does great work. I know Caroline is doing some great work around that, and the Victoria Project is also supporting families with midwives and doulas and things like that.
Who might have impediments to bringing it on.
It's a sad state of affairs that we don't have the community that we once did.
Where your neighbor
where
or
your family was there, or the community, the tribe, or the neighbor, everything, that was built in, and now you have to, pay for it in this society, and it's really, it's sad, and I, for one, that's also why I wanted to train doulas. That's also why I, do the work I do around it, because I want to be able to support. I don't want somebody wanting to work with me and not being able to afford it, and then saying, okay, I guess I just have to do this without a doula. That drives me nuts. Mm-hmm. And so I do what I can to make that happen. I don't care. Like, I don't want people unsupported. And so the more I can advocate for, birthing rights and birthing justice and, the right of the woman in the hospital setting, now you can get doulas who have MPI numbers, and they can get some money from the insurance company, but that also worries me, because then there's somebody telling you how many visits you can do, and they're only paying you a little bit of money. So can you make a living out of this? And how you really supporting the mama if you can only do 2 visits and then 1 postpartum visit? Like, that's, so it's another way. I just think there's so much abuse on the woman's body around birth and around reproductive health and her rights, and it's infuriating, like to think about it. So any way that I can help them create space within themselves, to create more room and understanding for themselves, to create more possibilities and understanding of who they are as the divine mother, as the divine feminine, I want to do that, because America's not really trying to help. Mm-hmm. They're just not. And it takes individuals who give a damn to find a way to support them and support their choices. And I mean, a lot of these births that we're hearing about, these women who are not making it through their deliveries, they did not have a doula. And I would love to know what the outcomes are. Like, they won't give you those stats, right? About what the outcomes are with the doula in the room. We do know that if the doula is in the room, the chances of C-section are less, usually 50% less, right? But where are we in the idea of, do we lose mamas when there's a doula in the room or not? Like, I want to know that, Do we lose babies? Because, I mean, right now, America, for considering where we're supposed to be, we're like, I think, number 59 in the world.
In terms of infant mortality?
In birth, yeah.
Uh-huh.
The practices. Like, it's ridiculous.
Mm. You identified quickly with my thesis that birthing and the birthing space is indeed psychedelic, right?
Oh, yeah.
So let's elucidate there a little bit. So when we talk about what does that mean to you to say that pregnancy, birth, the birthing experience is a psychedelic experience?
Because the mom was in a different world from the moment that, the moment that she's holding life, she's altered, and she continues to be altered. She can't be fully present in this world, this linear world, because she is building a baby, and a lot of her energy is going to the baby. So she's in this altered state where there can be intrusive thoughts, wild dreams, wild thoughts, lots of emotional ranges. Like it's just, she's not in control of her body, which is also why some women have a hard time, especially if they're very type A and want to control everything. You can't control labor, and you can't control birth, and you can't control the baby, right? So there's a lot of letting go and surrender and release that has to happen, which is the same thing that has to happen in a ceremony, a plant ceremony, where you just got to ride the waves. You just got to let go. And in the birth ceremony, she literally goes through several realms before that baby comes through the sacred portal. It's pretty incredible. It feels to me like when I'm in there with them, supporting them, I feel like I just took all kinds of things, you know, because I can feel it. I can feel the expansiveness. I can feel the waves. I can feel the alter states. And then, you know, as crazy as it sounds, you know, if a laboring mama starts talking to somebody in the room, I believe that there's somebody in the room, because sometimes I can even feel, oh, it's crowded in here now. We've got the guides here. We've got the angels here. We got the guides, the spirits. We got the ancestors. Everybody's here to check it out. Who's coming in next, right? You can feel it. You can see it. Sometimes you can hear it. And I don't know, it's a pretty magical place and space. And I'm just blessed and grateful that I get to support families through that ceremony.
In your experience, what are you seeing in the world right now outside of the birthing environment with regard to psychedelics and community and different communities coming to psychedelics and plant medicine specifically to do work, to have a ceremonial and purposeful experience? Like what in your peer groups or friend groups, or what are you picking up on that's changed or vibrant or telling?
Well, I feel like it's definitely more prevalent. There's a listening for it. Everyone has heard about it now, but there's also a polarization. You know, people get very judgmental about it. So do I walk around advertising it? No, not really. Like this may be the third time I've ever spoken about it. But the communities and the circles know, right? And the people who find me understand that I have a place that I hold, that a reverential place that I hold that, you know. But it's polarizing. And then, you know, depending on what group you're dealing with, there's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of righteousness, and I'm not interested in any of that stuff. And I'm just like, oh, I'm not your person. That's okay. I can tell you who to go to, though. This person's going to be great for you, right? No harm, no foul. It's fine. But right now, there are more people interested in it, and there are more people who want to get off of medication if they can create a different relationship. And there's a lot of people who understand that it's been abused and there's been a lot of negative light on it, and they want a new relationship. You know, they want to find out what's happening now. Where are we now? So sometimes I meet people, you know, second marriages or whatever, and they're in the older generation, and they know Timothy Leary, and they know Ken Kesey, and they know that work, right? And I'm introducing them to Paul. Like, come over here, magic, you know, check out some stamets, like read this, do this. Have you gone to Maps? Check out Maps, you know, just to give them some current, you know, data. And that seems to be making a difference too. Like if you can point them in direction, if they come to me and they have a lot of issues and they want some information, I will say, oh, I'm not the authority, but I can point you in this direction. Why don't you go do your due diligence? You know, why don't you go find out for yourself some information? I know what I'm witnessing, and I stand by it.
What's the dynamic between the doula and the midwife?
The doula and the midwife, most of them are so collaborative, you know, that there is a understanding that the doula really supports the midwife, you know, in that space. The doula's there first. The doula is there prenatally. So there's a lot more that the doula gets. It's a very intimate relationship, right? Like you mentioned earlier, that we become all things to that birthing family. So sometimes I am a counselor, sometimes I'm a therapist, sometimes I'm a nutritionist. It just depends what's happening, right? And so we're privy to a lot more of the reveal of the family and the dynamics and the emotional depth and all of that. And so when we are working with a midwife, she can say, you know, for example, I feel like she's going to need some support early on. So if you need me to go earlier than I would normally go, please let me know, because she's a little anxious and I feel like I could just drop her in and then leave and then come back and then call you in, you know, so that the midwife doesn't have to be there so early.
Yeah.
Because she's got an important job to do, right? She's got to help them navigate how to catch their baby. And so, but then there's also midwives who I work with who just are brilliant, and they're like, Haize, you've been there a long time. You should, let's get you to lay down and let me just come in for a little bit. And, you know, so we work really well together. And I'm blessed to have that with a couple of OBGYNs where it's very collaborative. So those birth ceremonies are beautiful and powerful.
In hospitals?
In hospital, yeah.
They're like on staff.
They're amazing, but they believe in birth and they trust birth. And they're always asking me, like, okay, if you were in a home birth, what would you do? And I'm like, oh, well, let's try this. Let's put them in this position. Let's do this. And okay, let's try it. You know, that type of relationship not only empowers the family, but it creates a more cohesive energy in the room. That container is solid, you know? And so I love when I get to work with like Dr. Fabi, and, you know, in the hospital setting. She's amazing. And I love when I get to work with, you know, midwives at home, because it's just always so straightforward and so transparent. And, you know, do they have to transfer sometimes? Absolutely, of course. Sometimes we do. But those are powerful moments where that trauma imprint is less, because they know they've done all the things and they had it all their way, you know. And so I do appreciate and love the collaborative aspect of working with the midwives.
Generally speaking, when a woman is using and working with a doula or a midwife or both, is the aspiration to have the pregnancy at home?
For some. So there are birthing centers too that have, you know, certified nurse midwives and professional midwives. And
Birthing centers that are not hospitals.
right. They're
Okay.
standalone.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
And then there are midwives and doulas who work together and they're doing a home birth. And then there are those who just want a doula because they know they're going to be in the hospital and they are concerned, right? So, yeah. So you find that a lot. Unfortunately, they have to be concerned about the hospital, you know? Especially if they are women of color. Like in America, no woman really is okay, right? We're number 59.
Talking about safety in the hospital for birth.
Yeah. But for women of color, Asian, Latin, Hispanic, whatever, black, brown, purple, they have a harder time in the hospital setting. Like we're Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is up on the, right now they're going through it. Certain hospitals are just being, brought to stand in front of the judge.
Because of malpractice?
Because of
oversight
the mortality rates are huge. Cedars-Sinai right now is going through it. Crazy. But then at the same time, they're also closing hospitals, closing labor and delivery places. You know, so Centinela Hospital, notorious, not great, lots of lives lost. But now they've shut down the whole L&D. Where are those people going to go to have their children? You know, why not restructure it? Why not bring some midwives in? Why not make it better? We know the midwifery model works. It just works. It does, which is why the outcomes are so much better. The outcomes and the rates of the things that you hear about the numbers here for birth are not reflected from home births or midwifery births or birthing centers. It's not any of us. Nothing. Those aren't the numbers. We're 4% of all births.
In the U.S.?
Yeah.
What's a good example to look at globally in terms of the efficacy of midwifery and doulas and how that contributes to a safer birthing environment?
Oh, wow. Well, you know what? I've traveled studying traditional midwifery, and I went to Africa, I went to India, I've gone to Cuba, I've done all these different things. And what I see is when they leave the traditional model, that's when they get into trouble. Like Africa was sitting on the brink of being, they were about to do some great stuff. And then they decided to copy the US and copy our model when they could have copied Copenhagen. They could have done anything else, but it's capitalist. So, and that's pretty much tells you once they leave the community care, the traditional midwifery care, and go into a hospital situation, then it's not great.
You've gone over this already, but I'll have you swipe through it one more time if you would, please. What are the reasons that birth would be considered traumatic? Which, for when I think of something that's traumatic, I think of when a human being experiences something that takes them fully out of their power or disorients them to a point of being wounded somehow by that experience. Whether or not that's accurate to you, or everyone is, it's a wide-ranging concept, trauma, right? But what is it that's traumatizing for the child, and what is it that's traumatizing potentially for the mother during childbirth?
Well, that's somewhat hard because it is a very individualized thing. Like I said before, what I would find traumatizing, the mom might find great.
Okay, yeah.
And
yeah.
for the partner too. But in general, we can say if they're not spoken to, if they're not informed, if they're separated from their child, they're separated from their partner. COVID was notorious because they were separated. Their partners couldn't be in there with them.
Yeah.
The doulas couldn't be in. They couldn't go into hear the heartbeat. Like it was
Cold.
It was bad. Yeah, it was bad. So is there trauma from that for mamas and families? Yeah, still.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I'm getting somebody who is on their second baby or third baby from that time, I'm doing a lot of work around reframing that experience for them.
What do you think it is that makes it stick like it does? I've read different things about what that can be attributed to,
Really?
neurologically or spiritually, but it's that stickiness, right? It's it happens and then it stays with you and then it works on you in ways that are detrimental to your health over time.
Yeah, I think it's because it's not a collaboration, it's not a partnership, it's not co-created. The things that happen, like if all of a sudden the baby's heartbeat drops, which it can drop, right? We expect it to drop as the baby's descending. We expect it, but we want a quick recovery of the heartbeat. But if it drops and everybody runs in and the bells and whistles are going on, and the lights are all coming on, and everyone's yelling, and everyone's like in high mode, high gear, and then like, we got to go, we got to transfer it, let's prepare for, and nobody's talking to her. Nobody's really giving her a chance to process what's happening. Partner's over there freaking out because something's going on with the two people he loves the most. Like, it's a bad situation. But there are things that we can do to prevent that bad situation. Like if we do less interruptions and if we pause to talk about things beforehand and keep giving them informed consent, explaining everything.
Yeah.
If you do this, this is the possibility that these things could happen. We might have to rush. We don't want it to take in a baby who's not doing well. We have a baby who's well right now. We see this might be coming. What do you think? How do you feel? What are we doing? That changes it a little bit. It's just when things are taking out of their control. It's the same way why there's so much There's still so much trauma on people of color here in America. The ripping away of families, of babies from, mothers sold here, sold there. And like that trauma is in the DNA now.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a long way to go to heal all that. But like I mentioned before, though, Tony Moss, the Red Tribe, is doing this work with people of color to actually start healing that through the plant medicine. Powerful.
Can you share a little more information about that
I would
person?
love to share, but I don't know enough to share about it. But I know that he's doing it. And
Tony Moss is the individual.
Yeah, I'll tell you about him later.
Yeah.
But he's powerful, and he's well studied, and he is well learned, and he is he's been a part of MAPS, and he's he gets it. But that's the type of trauma that we're talking about that can happen in a birth space.
Human beings are so mind-bogglingly resilient in so many ways. Why does trauma stick so hard?
Isn't that a good question? Why does it stick so hard? I think a lot of it has to do with the ego. I think when we feel alone, isolated, and separate, we cling on to this ego to keep us alive and to keep us relevant and to keep us here and to give us some juice. And I feel like that might be one of the things, because also what I see happen when there's trauma from a birth is that it can either go into victim mode or martyrdom or like anger, where they're just, it's perpetual. They're just getting juice off it because they're so angry. Well, this was done to me and I'm so upset because they did this to me, and it just keeps going and going and going. Or they're the victim. Oh, I really wanted, and they just wouldn't let me do it. They just wouldn't hear me. And I really want, and I feel like both those extremes can lead to like even more, where it just starts to embed and stay there and grow. And I feel that when community is a part of it, when there's a lot of education, communities there, when they have a say, that they're able to say, I did the best I could. I know that I showed up for this. I showed up well. And this baby has a will too.
I might bring this up in all the rest of the podcasts that I ever do, because it was a profound moment that I got to enjoy at a lecture, a speech, a public presentation given by the artists Allison and Alex Gray recently.
Yeah, I love them.
And I got to see it at the PRS in Los Feliz, and she was talking about her belief that one of the biggest takeaways from her psychedelic experiences, her plant medicine experiences specifically, was the idea that the universe has three primary components to it: unity, chaos, and language. Language symbol. And just kind of calling back to that because of this component that you addressed earlier, advocating for information and for being spoken to and for being engaged and for being treated like an intelligent person that should have the ability to think through, even in under duress, right? Like to know what options are available for them. Anybody who has, if we're talking medically, anybody who has sick family, just getting information in that space. I always soak up way more than my fair share when I'm in there. Like I have to deal with something because I want to know, and I know nobody else is going to ask the questions for me on my behalf when I'm by myself, right? And sometimes we don't know what questions to ask, and it's not like, when you're on a budget, when you're on a timeline, when you're going through the system, it's not always provided. So I love that, just that idea alone, that the doula could be that rational voice in that maelstrom of activity, encouraging the mother to think through and to be aware of their options, to be an advocate for reason in that moment. That's so appealing to me.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's necessary.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's being a guide, right?
Yeah,
and it's
I'm
holding
a guardian
holding space.
again.
A guardian, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. The gatekeeper.
I think we've illustrated the point pretty well. Do you?
I think so.
Yeah. Any parting thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with in terms of maybe someone who is watching or listening to the show and they've thought about looking at they're expecting, or they maybe have anxieties about even getting pregnant, or fears of being in this country or maybe pregnant elsewhere. But any parting thoughts from someone who knows this space so well and who is thankfully and gratefully willing to talk about the psychedelic component and how mind expanding it is from start through, postpartum. Any final little tidbits you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I think one of the most misconceptions is that you have to do a lot of it. You don't. You can sit one time.
Mm-hmm.
You can do one thing. Once the medicine is in you, to call it up or to access it is so easy. Like, I haven't sat in a long time, but if I sat here and talked about it, I could bring it up. I could feel it, So the gateway to the inner world and the access to intuition is there just one time, but if they're interested, if they're curious, if they're looking into it, trust their intuition. They need that anyway to be a mama, to find their way through their pregnancy ceremony and find their way through their birth ceremony into motherhood. They need to be able to trust themselves and trust their intuition. I think that would be the best advice I could give them, because that's the thing I'm always saying. What do you think, mama? What do you feel, mama? What's your instincts say? Check into that womb wisdom. What does it say?
I wanted to ask you one more question before I forget. I thought of it earlier. When we talk about the providers and burnout, fatigue, or trauma that providers themselves are going through exposure to the system or having to go through these mechanical motions, what is the doula and midwife community doing to support one another? How are you showing up for each other? Like, I'm sure there are times that are more challenging than others. And so what does that system of support look like for you?
Well, we come together in different circles, and midwives have to do what's known as a peer review, and that they have to do that to keep their licensure, right? Doulas do not have to do that, but we have support system, and we do that for each other. We're checking in. We're, bringing each other food and soup, and we're camping together. We're going to the beach together. Just any time that we can just decompress and release, because unfortunately, we see such violence and such abuse in the hospital setting. It's just ridiculous, like to the point where there's just, you're just crying. You're just, it makes no sense. And I remember when I was in Africa and I was with my mentor, Salama, and she said to me, I want you to trust your instincts and trust your intuition, and you can do this. And she just threw me in, right? And I went into this first birth, and then I did some more births with twins, and some of them were so hard, and some of them were so beautiful. But I remember one of the midwives saying to me, "Sister, you're blessed. You are blessed, because you will not see what you see here in America." And I thought that was true. I thought it was true, but it's not. The abuse in the rooms, the way they're spoken to, the way they're handled, treated, grabbed, it's awful. It's just awful. So yeah, we have to love each other up. We have to take time to be with each other, to communicate to each other, to circle up, to allow us to heal, because otherwise we will burn out and we can't show up. And so every now and then you'll hear a sister come up to you and say, so when's your break? Where are you going? You going to go somewhere? You're going to camp? What are you going to do? Because they can see it, it's there and you're at your wit's end. So, yeah.
Yeah. Catch that break. Where do people find out about you, what you do, and a little bit more about the world?
I'm on Instagram at I am Haize Hawke, and I am also on Facebook. I'm working on a website. I've been working on this website for 3 years now. The landing page is there, so that's the way they can get me.
It's going to be awesome.
It's so crazy. I'm just not that chick, but I know that it's important for people. But I'm usually word of mouth, and people just find me, or they find me on Instagram.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Haize, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.